holy shit, the Eagles are legit. Holy shit, Hurts is legit. Y'all are going to be right back in it. What a
Look,
freaking battle. It was so impressive.
And you look at the NFC overall, it's the Eagles and the Niners and everybody else. And the Niners, since we're talking about football, this offseason, the Niners already took a top 5 defense and made it precipitously better. And they signed George Kittle long-term on the offensive side. And they have 2 legitimate young quarterbacks that one of them is going to step up and take that starting job. And even if that guy goes down, they still have a legitimate starting quarterback backing him up. So, and I can't imagine that what happened to them last year at their quarterback position could repeat itself where you're getting down to your 4th and 5th string guys, right? So I think that San Francisco, to me, right now, if the season were starting and I was to say how many games I think they're going to win, they're going to be like a 14-3, 15-2 team next year. That's how good they are.
No disagreement here, but I think the Eagles will be as well, and that's going to be going to be the battle on that side for sure. Especially with Rodgers now being gone, most likely.
Right, and now that's very interesting too. So I'll finish this thought with the Eagles and the Niners. Is that both of these teams are young. They're not carrying any dead cap space. They got a lot of things moving forward. Like all teams, they're going to have some guys that are going to have to go or going to be dropped or you're not going to be able to re-sign. Clark this year in Kansas City, for instance. So these are the kind of things that happen that seem like they can be devastating to a team. But in the NFL, if Pat Mahomes has proven one thing, and before him, many other quarterbacks, I'm just talking about because he's the best quarterback in the NFL right now. If you have somebody that can play at that level at the quarterback position, you're going to friggin' win no matter what, period. And if Jalen Hurts still has any naysayers out there that don't think he's the guy, you don't know what the hell you're watching at all. Stop watching football. You're an idiot because that guy is legit. He is probably already now, especially if Aaron Rodgers moves over to the Jets, he's one of the top 3-4 quarterbacks in the entire NFC, and he's only in his 3rd year.
Amen to that, but I'm actually gonna say that as much as Clark the Shark, thanks for everything, Frank. But as much as he's been such an amazing standout in the playoffs and in the championship games, he's very expensive.
Or even when, oh my God, yeah, and should be, frankly.
Honestly,
he's earned that payday,
production,
right?
But the production has fallen off throughout the season. The sack production, particularly, and I'm honestly, for the money he commanded or he could command, I was thankful that the Chiefs were moving on. I thought it was time to get younger and cheaper there at the position, and I actually think that they've done it. I think that they're with Charles Omenihu. Picked him up from San Francisco. Dude's 25 years old. He's grading out as a hell of a defensive end. Top 6, top 10 in the NFL for pass rush. The thing is, Clark was such a beast at the run and the option. Like, he was really good at setting the edge, sometimes at the detriment of the ability to sack the quarterback. And I think that the Chiefs and Spags in general would like to get more into, heavy pass rush. Granted, setting the edge is really important, especially in this league with the running quarterbacks and so forth. But Frank Clark had a tendency to take games off, in my opinion, and then would really show out in the big games or in a contract season, particularly, right? So he's definitely making business decisions, and I get that at his age, but so be it. Well, then go do that somewhere else. The Chiefs are, in order to keep this thing a running, we have to keep getting younger because we've kicked the can. We're kicking the can down the road on Mahomes, and eventually, like, Kelsey's not going to be there, and like at some point, the piper gets paid. So. We're trying to freaking make hay right now. That's all.
Belichick set the model in New England that you keep your core players the best you can, particularly at the quarterback, and you just keep redefining yourself, and doing the things that you need to do. And they every year they were jettisoning people that everybody thought, well, New England's done next year, and it never happened. And Andy Reid right now is probably his relationship with his GM and the front office, and they're all on the same page, which makes a great organization. And Andy really knows what he's doing, and he's got a really good thing going on here. And I don't see any signs of it slowing down, only because for 5 consecutive years, no one has been able to slow it down. So why next year all of a sudden magically that would happen seems a little ridiculous to me. I don't think that'll happen at all. And I think that, again, the fight's going to be going through Kansas City, as it generally does and has been for quite some time now. I think the real difference is this guy that I think, Aaron Rodgers, who I find something very weird going on here. So the entire NFL, from our boy Pat McAfee to ESPN to all the other alphabet soup stuff to Colin Cowherd to all of them, that this is a done deal, right? He's going to the Jets. Well, this was a couple of weeks ago. Why hasn't he gone to the Jets? The deal's not done. I was talking to our friend James about that earlier today, and we were trying to figure out if maybe because of the dead cap space money that is going to be owed, is that after a certain date the money's less, and that's what they're waiting for? But we couldn't find any information on it in the search that we did. So I'm just curious as to why this hasn't happened yet and what's taking so long, if in fact he's going to move. And I know that there is a spot, and I can't remember the date, and it's right around draft time, either the week before or the week after, where's that first dead cap money space where it either gets protracted or it gets reduced. And I think that might be what's going on here. But I have to say to the entire NFC, what date? June 1st?
June 1st, yeah. If Rodgers is designated as a post-June 1st trade, and Green Bay does indeed save $15 million off its cap.
Okay, that's what they're going to do. They'd be crazy not to. Why would they want to eat an extra $15 million? That's crazy. Right. So, and I don't think
now Rodgers is going to be mad.
I think Aaron's going to get. I think Rodgers is going to get. He's probably not going to like the compensation they're going to accept either. It's probably only going to be, I wouldn't give more than a first round draft pick and some other ancillary picks, or maybe a couple of players, only because Aaron Rodgers is 38 years old. So you can't go. And go ahead.
Green Bay started out by asking for this year's number 9 pick. And the Jets were like, nah, don't think so, Tim.
No, it's not. We're not doing that.
Number 9, no.
Because here's the thing too. Aaron's been pretty clear, I think. I don't think there's going to be a huge renegotiating on their contract. I think what the Jets are going to do, given his age, and Aaron being who Aaron is, I think like the Rams did and like Tampa did, I think that they're going to try to bring somebody in for just a couple of 3 years and see if they can get a championship out of it. So they're not going to sell or mortgage their future forever just for that, because the other two did do that, and now they're going to pay hell for it. And I don't think the Jets are going to do that because they have an extremely young team. They got a top 5 or 6 defense in the AFC, and they have a great offense if they actually had anything coming close to being a caliber quarterback.
True story. If I may add some additional information about my Chiefs, coming over from your newly, I guess, found fandom for the Jacksonville Jaguars, since you moved down right next door.
So,
and since the team you've been a fan of for your entire life since you were a baby actually has left the planet, they've actually
that's right. They no longer exist.
Disintegrated. So that's why the
Washington Redskins no longer exist.
Yep, you're completely allowed to jump ship, and because the ship's no longer there.
And so I am no fan of the Cunt Manders.
So with that,
and I hate Daniel Snyder. So. And I moved, by the way, 800 miles.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you might as well do what you're doing. I mean, you made the right decision, obviously. So, yeah. But anyway, from the Jacksonville Jaguars comes a young man of 25 years of age, Jawan Taylor, right tackle, very versatile guy, can also play left tackle. We're going to need him because we just sent Orlando Brown to Cincinnati. Um, Chiefs are probably going to try to find a left tackle in the draft, I would imagine, and maybe put Jawan Taylor at the left for a while. But the difference between Jawan Taylor and Orlando Brown Jr. is Brown Jr. was really good against the run, pretty good against the pass, but kind of lackluster. He's slow, super slow, and got beat a lot. That's not the thing with Jawan Taylor. He's fast, and he's actually a much better pass protector. He's younger, he's cheaper than what Orlando Brown was holding out for. Orlando Brown was kind of being a butthead with the negotiations. So I'm actually happy with this swap. And the difference between this guy and Orlando Brown is between Taylor and Orlando Brown is that Brown simply would refuse to play right. Like if you needed him to play right, he's like, I'm not playing right. And it's all about the money, obviously, but he's just like, I'm just not doing that. So I think the Chiefs like guys who are versatile and who will do what's asked of them. And I think they got a guy that can do that for them. So I'm pretty stoked about that move.
Well, again, I mean, it's one of those things. You're letting go of an all pro, and you're bringing in somebody who probably will get to that level, and that's what Andy Reid does. That's we were just saying about that with Bill Belichick's kind of shit he did all the time. I'm going to bring this guy over from this roster, who always seemed like a good player, and now I'm going to turn him into a better player. And that's what makes the great teams tick constantly and keep moving. I think it'll be a little different in the AFC if Rodgers ends up with the Jets. I think it's going to be very interesting because the AFC is so loaded right now. You're bringing the best quarterback from the NFC over to the AFC. So now you have Allen and you have Lamar Jackson, of course, Pat Mahomes, who is the cream of the crop. You got Justin Herbert. Now you got Deshaun Watson down at Cleveland, and now with the whole off season and a full training camp. I mean, let's face it, that guy is unbelievable. He didn't forget how to play football through his troubles, and now you're bringing Aaron Rodgers in. Good Lord.
They also
That's going to be
got
stacked. And I forgot Joe Burrow, for God's sake. Jesus.
well, and the Jets just picked up one of the Chiefs' fairly standout wide receivers in McCole Hardman. So they just brought McCole over there. So the Jets are definitely trying to go all in, trying to make a run for it, and I definitely think they could. Speaking of the Chiefs, though, back again with the defense, it looks like the Chiefs have been really focused on defense. We brought Drew Tranquil over, safety, or I'm sorry, linebacker out of the Chargers, over from the Chargers. Kid's a stud, young, 27, hell of a pass rusher. That's going to be fantastic for us. Our linebacking core is killer now. We lost Juan Thornhill, but we picked up Mike Edwards from Tampa Bay to replace him, so that's a pretty nice swap. Guys like Nick Allegretti and Blake Bell, who have been good standout players for us, have decided to come back on one-year deals. Drew Tranquil, also who came over from the Chargers, is in on a one-year deal. We've been able to get a ton of guys in on one-year deals just because they like the fact that we can make a run at it. But I would say, other than that, one of the big moves, besides McCole Hardman leaving, and another big question now that's been left open is Juju Smith-Schuster just got a nice contract to go over to New England for 3 years. And so our two basically top receivers behind Kadarius Toney are gone now. And so the big question now is, what are they going to do? And a lot of the trade rumors are about DeAndre Hopkins. And I tell you what, man, I'd be pretty pumped if that happened. But I just don't think that seems like the Chiefs' style. Like historically, they just haven't paid veteran receivers money like that. It seems like they're more likely to try and pull a guy out of the draft, or do something like they did with Toney, where it's like a guy who's not working out on a team and they bring him over and try to see if they can make it work.
I think Kansas City, again, is just going to be phenomenal the way they have been for years now. it's great that they're addressing issues, even continuing to do so at a wide receiver. But to me, you literally could put my neighbor Jim across the street, who's in his 70s, and he could play wide receiver for Kansas City and probably catch 10 touchdown passes and go over 1,000 yards, and that's with a walker. Because there's, I mean, look, they took away Tyreek Hill, right, and he got better. So it's just the way this guy's different, next level kind of stuff. Oh, and by the way, Kelsey just signed the biggest contract a tight end has ever signed ever. And that's so he's good for, he's not going anywhere in the next 4 years. And as long as you have that connection, because as we saw in the Super Bowl in the first half, he's the one who kept the Chiefs in the game in the first half because they barely had the ball, and he made some amazing catches that kept things going on and the touchdown. And then in the second half, they literally used him as a decoy, and he allowed everybody else to be open for them to come back and win that game. Kelsey, in the second half of that game, while he only caught a few balls, literally was probably the most valuable player on that offense, with the exception of Pat Mahomes.
Absolutely.
Even when he's not in the game plan, he's still the most important guy on the field other than your quarterback, because he's drawing double or triple coverage.
Yep. You got to bug three guys.
Both times when they were, that's right. But look, both times when they were down and they ran that same friggin' hot dog play or whatever they call it to one side and the mistake to the other side. But both times, if you pull back and you look at the wide screen of those shots, Kelsey has a safety, a corner, and on the second touchdown, a linebacker all running around right behind him. That leaves people open. He's the most valuable guy on both of those touchdowns without even being near the ball. It's amazing to me how desperate teams are to try to cover him, because there are oftentimes where he just literally seems unstoppable no matter how hard you try. He's the only tight end in the league that I can ever remember in the history of my life where cornerbacks try to cover him and they can't.
It's because he doesn't have routes.
So as long as him and Mahomes, he does whatever he wants, just like Pat Mahomes kind of does whatever he wants, right?
All by
Kansas
feel.
City's just a different team. Mm-hmm. When this whole thing's said and done, Jerry Rice and Steve Young, Jerry Rice and Joe Montana, or Michael Irvin was to Troy Aikman, and the lists go on and on and on and on. People are going to talk about Kelsey and Mahomes the same way. Like, that's right now, it is the most devastating duo in football, and it has been for 5 years. And it shows no chance of slowing down at all. I think in Philadelphia, they're starting to build some of that kind of character and connection on offense. They were so impressive in that Super Bowl. I'm still months later, still just blown away at Jalen Hurts and what he did. Just remarkable. I was so impressed. So Philly's going to be great for a long time. San Francisco is a big story to me in the offseason, because what they're doing with the defense that was already top 3 in the NFL, they're going to be the best defense in the NFL next year. They're going to be frightening. And all they need is I think Lance is going to end up being their guy, because I think his upside is just much, much more, far more athletic, far bigger, far stronger. So, and with a rocket for an arm. So, and he started last year. So he was their starter last year. He didn't get into that position by accident. So I figure that will continue if he stays healthy and they do well. That's a team to look out for. I don't know what the Bills are doing right now, but they have to address the fact that Stephon Diggs is their only clear option on offense for Josh Allen. They need help. And they don't seem to be addressing it currently, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. But Josh Allen can't do everything himself.
True story.
He needs somebody else to go to. They really need, to me, they need a wheelback. It's just somebody to give him a safety valve who can get out anywhere on the field and get open.
Well,
until they give him some help.
They're really, really, really courting D-Hop, and he's apparently really interested in them. And I guess Hopkins put on his Insta or something, some lyrics to Buffalo Soldier, Bob Marley, and alluding to Buffalo. honestly, that would be ridiculous. If you Stephon Diggs and DeAndre Hopkins, damn it.
Now, right. See now, and I think Knox is a right now a middle of the road kind of tight end, but he has real upside too. He's a young player. If you can, right now, there's so much pressure on him because he's really the only other option. You bring in DeAndre Hopkins, and now you just took some of the shackles off of this young tight end. He's built more in the George Kittle kind of frame than a Kelsey, but that's not bad. That's not bad. That's not saying anything demonstratively bad about him. He can be more important to the office, at least in the way that he can block. He's a big guy, 6'5", 250-ish. The Kelsey to me is a wide receiver with a tight end put at the end of his at his position, but to me he's more like a slot receiver the way they move him around and the things they do with him.
Let's because you're a former Redskins fan and from that same division.
No, time out. I am a Redskin fan for always and forever. The Redskins no longer exist in the NFL.
Right, which means you can't be a fan anymore. Sorry.
So well, anyway. I can be a fan of everything. All my memories of my fandom. I'll go sing our "Hail to the Redskins" song with my boys when I go home, and we'll cry into our beers. But at least I got somebody worth following now.
Yeah. So, it's speaking of that, and in your decades of following that conference and that division particularly, I would like to use this as a way to segue back to the Chiefs real quick, because there was something in our Super Bowl response episode where you asked about Isaiah Pacheco, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to just swing into him real quick before we move on from the NFL. But I want to, as a jumping off point, I want to use a guy named who unfortunately looked incredibly promising, who was the exact opposite of Isaiah Pacheco, who was drafted incredibly early and everybody thought was going to absolutely just rule the world as far as running backs are concerned. And his name is Ezekiel Elliott. And the man is a fucking turd at this point. Excuse my language, but he is done for. And Dallas is moving on. And they actually just took one of the Chiefs' backups in Ronald Jones to replace this guy.
Yeah, Zeke's done.
Yeah.
He has. This is the problem they have in Dallas, is that Jerry Jones rewards guys at the wrong time in their career with massive contracts. They rewarded Ezekiel Elliott the year after the decline started. You don't give a guy number one running back kind of money when he was already starting to decline. It has been clear in Dallas for a couple of years that Pollard is clearly the better option than Ezekiel Elliott, yet they kept shoehorning him into games, and he was hurting them, not helping them. Zeke was great for 4 or 5 years, but that was it. And that's normal for an NFL running back these days. They did the same thing with Dak Prescott. They rewarded him with a massive contract when he is still yet to actually do anything. He's won nothing. In his entire career, after 7 years or 8 years, he won one playoff game against a Tampa Bay team with a losing record because their stinky, crappy friggin' division couldn't produce anybody that could win more than frigging 8 games. Yes. Tampa Bay had no business being in the playoffs last year. And that showed. And then Zeke had a great game against a team that was massively overmatched. And then the very next week when they had to play a real team, they got smoked, because that's who the Dallas Cowboys are. They're always the bridesmaid. They're never the bride. They look pretty and they look good in the bridesmaid dress, but that's all they are. They never get into the wedding dress. And it's because Jerry Jones falls in love with players that he won't give up on, even though they haven't earned anything yet. And that's a horrible way to run your franchise. And his son, Steve, is the guy who should actually be running the show now. And Jerry won't get out of the way.
Shocker. Well, I tell you what, I feel like Zeke was a lot to do with, his success was a lot to do with an incredible O-line, much like Emmitt Smith. And it's not to say. I mean, I saw Zeke shake some guys out of their jocks and make some really incredible runs and blow some guys up with his shoulder. So don't get me wrong. I'm not taking everything away from him, but he was a little overhyped the whole time, in my opinion. So
Well, at the front end of everything, though, with the Cowboys, the way the whole thing came together, I mean, Zeke and Dak came in at roughly the same time.
mm-hmm.
Zeke, for the first few years, allowed Dak to look a lot better than he was because he took a lot of pressure off of him.
That's a good point.
And then so everybody became convinced that Dak Prescott was a much, much, much better quarterback than he actually was. Anybody who thinks that Dak Prescott is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL doesn't know shit about football. He's just not. He's a great guy. How many times have you heard me say he's one of the best guys you'll ever probably meet? I wish he would marry one of my daughters, right? But he's not going to win you a Super Bowl championship any more than Tony Romo is going to win you a Super Bowl championship. That's not the caliber of player that they are. They're not. And Jerry Jones refuses to accept that.
You just made me realize something about Zeke, too. Like, you're right. After a couple of years, once Dak was exposed, that was detrimental to Zeke.
That's right.
Yeah, I didn't actually figure that in. So good point.
Because now they can load the box and knock him on his ass because now they're no longer afraid, right? So defenses attack Dallas in a different way, and Dallas's players, and I think the thing I find interesting about Jerry Jones is like with the Commanders, and the whole time that they were the Redskins before that under Daniel Snyder, the reason they have most of the problems they did is because the guy running the show just didn't seem to really care about the team. He cared about his own image or he cared about money, but he was never a guy that ever connected with his own fans. Hell, he sued some of his own fans. He's a piece of shit. Right. But Jerry Jones loves the Cowboys in a way that I can't even begin to understand or explain to someone, right? He's not doing any of this because he doesn't love his team. He's got so much passion for it that it clouds his judgment when it comes to huge contracts and stuff like that to players that he prefers. And that's a terrible way to run your team as well.
Yeah.
The way you run your team is where you can go, you know what? We love this guy. He's done great for us. Matter of fact, he's won 6 Super Bowls or 5 Super Bowls for us, but we got to let him go now because it's time to move into the future. Great teams like the Patriots, they know when to say goodbye and when not to get themselves in cap held trouble so that they can give a B plus player A plus money. And that's what they did with Dak Prescott last year. You can't give Dak Prescott guaranteed $180 million. He's not that good.
True story. So anyway, I'll use that as a jumping off point for talking about running backs here briefly. My man Isaiah Pacheco. If anybody is watching who happened to watch episode 1 where we talk about the Super Bowl hangover and we address the things that took place in the Super Bowl, I was talking about tight ends. Ed asked about a cat named Isaiah Pacheco, and I misunderstood, so I kept talking about tight ends. But I felt bad going back because I'm like, man, this guy, he deserves some attention. He is a stud.
He was awesome in the playoffs overall.
Yeah, man. This kid was drafted in the 7th round, the 7th freaking round from Rutgers, right? Rutgers running backs, what? 7th round, what? And this guy is amazing. He took Tyreek Hill's number and ran with more anger than Tyreek Hill, like crazy. That's the most amazing thing. The way he runs jumps off the film. He's only 5'10". He's not a big guy, but it's so violent that you're like, holy shit, look at this guy. And it causes him to get yards. Like, he's a stud, man. I love that kid. And he's apparently just like the best rookie ever. He's just like a sponge and just trying to figure out any way he can, learn more, do things to make the team better. He just sounds like he's the most thankful person to be there. He almost didn't get drafted. And now he's, Super Bowl ring, right? So amazing. Love this kid. Super cool story. And, man, shout out to Brett Veach and Andy Reid and all the people in the Chiefs office, front office for seeing the 7th round, running back for what it was. This kid's a stud. He's not going anywhere. And that's another
Oh
reason
no,
why.
well, the thing that I find interesting about the powerhouse, otherwise known as Rutgers, and the thing that you can say about them that everybody can understand and understand just what a powerhouse is, that a football team at the college level they are. Rutgers is absolutely the best football team at Rutgers.
True story.
They are absolutely, they are. And I think along with that and like $2, you could get coffee, and then that'd be about it.
Well, you want to know something?
Rutgers
Actually,
is
uh, I mean,
Rutgers is one of those teams that they're never going like going to the Big Ten was a boon for them financially, but Rutgers will never, ever, 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 and I mean ever, win a Big Ten championship. The worst Ohio State, Penn State, or Michigan team or Wisconsin team you ever saw would still smash Rutgers by about 40 points.
true story.
But they do occasionally come up with some stud players that end up in the NFL and do good things. And this Pachenko kid is going to be one of them.
Oh, dude, that's the thing. It's such a beautiful thing because the idea is always getting cheaper and younger. You can't get any cheaper than 7th round, other than undrafted and younger. Just drafted him, absolute show out. The Chiefs don't have to worry about running backs. The only guy I'm concerned in that group about bringing back is Jarek McKinnon, Jet, because he's a bad mofo and he's a vet, but he's like a 9 or 10 year vet, so he's probably on his last contract, as a running back. So he's probably going to want substantial pay. But the reason why he's still around and still a free agent and hasn't left is because I fundamentally predict that the Chiefs are bringing back Jarek McKinnon. He's too valuable, way too valuable.
Well, when you're that good, oftentimes you can keep players that aren't, say, Pro Bowl superstar kind of players. They'll oftentimes are willing to accept, a little bit less because he's not going to go out and sign some amazing guaranteed contract, especially at running back. But he knows that he's going to be in the Super Bowl run. So why not just take a little bit less money? Because what a lot of people don't take into consideration in Kansas City, if he is a part of the whole thing, he's a well-liked player. The money that he might, let's put it this way. He'll take a little less to stay in Kansas City, but he'll make more on the back end because Kansas City wins than to take a bigger contract for a team that's not even going to make the playoffs, because that back end money to do commercials for dealerships in the Kansas City market or to push his own products that he may be working on, being on a team that wins Super Bowl championships, that helps spurs all that stuff along a whole lot faster. So the backside money could easily wipe out any money he loses by staying. So smart players know that is the case, and oftentimes that's the reason they stay.
Well, from my observations, that seems to be how he plays things. Like, he's a smart cat and he plays the long ball. And nobody other than like super football nerds, nobody really heard of Jarek McKinnon until he was a Chief. You know what I mean? The Jet. So he's smart. He knows. He's like, I'll take a couple bucks less today to cash in later tomorrow when I'm not out there banging. And I just, I can just make appearances around the Chiefs as a 2-time ring wearer or something, right?
Right. Well, here's the thing. If you're McKinnon, and again, we're talking about a contract, we're talking about, taking less money to stay with Kansas City. But what you just said there is exactly my point. People now know who he is because he plays with Kansas City and he's on national television literally every week. And if you go and you play for the Indianapolis Colts, you're going to be in the Colts market. You're going to be in the market against the team that they're playing that week. But how many times are the Colts going to get the Sunday night game or the Monday night game? Maybe twice a year, not every week. It's a huge difference because there are really great players on the Indianapolis Colts. And most people right now who are listening to this, if I said, name me 5 great Colts right now that you would want on your team, you probably couldn't name 5 of them because you probably never even saw them play last year. But you can't miss the Chiefs because they're there all the time. And so for players with a brain in their head, they know that the back end money can beat the upfront money if you play your cards right. So if I was that player, I'm a starter, I'm a B plus player, I'm not an A player. But my back end money could literally triple my front end money. That's the really smart play right there.
Right.
Plus, you want those guys on your smart players. You always want smart players. Smart players are always, or most times, better than the guy with all the talent. Because if you don't know how to use that talent, it's worthless.
Amen. So, I guess here. I'll say this before we transition, folks. If you're watching this right now and you're wondering if we're going to start talking about the draft, we both have thoughts about the draft and about what's coming. But we are going to save that for its own special episode where we just talk about the draft and sort of our little draft boards, predictions we'll make. So we're going to get there soon because April is soon upon us. But we're going to leave, I think, unless you have another thing to add, Ed, we'll probably just move on from the NFL here since we spent a good 40 minutes on it.
It's sports, and even in my 50s, I have more testosterone than I need, and I'll talk about the NFL all goddamn day. So if we don't move on, we never will. So
right, fair enough. So well said. All right, so the next segment here is UFOs, Ed, and you sent me something earlier this week, a story. It just seems like every week there's a new story about the government admitting there are UFOs, admitting, yes, alluding to at least that there are UFOs, putting it more and more in your head. And there's several different conspiracies about this. You know, one of them is just simply, if we keep you busy with that story, you don't pay attention to this story, right? Which there's plenty of credence of that. We know the government is super busy with that. Another idea is that if we can keep you in fear of UFOs, we can pump more money into the defense state, into, the space program, SpaceX, the Space Force, the whole deal, right? Defense industry. Those are all plausible theories.
Just for the record, I have to say this. Space Force makes me laugh every time I hear somebody say it's like it's out of Dragon Ball Z or
Space
something.
Force.
Space Force. It's so dumb.
All right, you're not wrong.
Jesus. So last week when I was sending you that stuff, did you see the other? And I forgot to send you this story now, and they have repeated this multiple times this week through multiple different sources that the Space Force program and the guy who heads it up says that they now believe that maybe there is a mothership hiding in our solar system, and they're probing the Earth.
Yeah.
Really?
Fantastic.
Seems... you know what it is? If there is a spaceship out there and this is exactly what they're doing, this is my thought. They're sitting there and they're looking and they're going, you know what? A lot of the people down there are pretty cool. But the only thing that I can ascertain is they're complete fucking morons because of the people that they chose to lead them. So we don't want to actually go there. We just probe them.
In your butt. They just probe you in your butt.
That's right. They're just going to probe your anal cavity, looking for signs of a brain, because we don't have none between our ears.
So I've been a consummate believer in UFOs forever. Like, ever since I can remember, I'm like, there's no way they're not a thing. They have to be real. There's no way we're the only creatures alive in the cosmos. There has to be other intelligent life form out there, right? So I've gone my whole life believing this, and all of a sudden now I feel myself being more skeptical of UFOs than I've ever been in my life. And that's simply because I don't believe or trust the government for lots of good reasons. We've shared plenty before, and I'll continue to share them the rest of my life, the reasons why, right? But I don't fucking trust the government, and if they're telling me there's aliens, maybe there's not.
They probably don't exist now, right? If it was pitch black outside and a politician went on TV and said, it's pitch black outside right now, I'd be like, sun must be shining.
I'd be
There's
like,
no other explanation.
they'd be like, no, Chad, you just have your sunglasses on. And I'd be like, no, you're full of shit. Yeah, I don't see no aliens. They ain't real, government. I don't buy it. You're bullshitting me.
Oh,
I know it.
it's
You're
so
always bullshitting
crazy.
me. I caught you
So,
again, government.
but they're out pushing this narrative, it seems, a lot lately, which really concerns me. What are they covering up? What are they shifting or try to shift our focus from? That's an interesting question to ponder, because they can be very. I mean, our government's as shifty as they come. Confidence in our government is even amongst people that believe in big government. I mean, across all spectrums in this country, our Congress is trusted by roughly 11 to 13% of the population. 11 to 13%. And that's because we now know, or anybody who pays even a modicum of attention, is that our government is only there for themselves, and they don't even read the bills they write. Lobbyists and bureaucrats are writing everything. Giant corporations are writing all our rules, laws, and regulations, everything to benefit themselves. And so there's no reason. So if people in our government are actually telling me that they believe that there are aliens out there, I no longer would believe that either. No, thank you.